Okay, yep, we're ready. Yep, it's on.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're a little tight quarters here, so a little bit noisy. Ladies and gentlemen, call this meeting of the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning to order. We welcome everybody from our summer sabbatical, back to work, back to business. And with that in mind, you want to read the roll call, please?
Yes, and just as a reminder, same as in the other room, we're having some tech problems there, so we're here, but the formality is the same. If you could just turn your microphone on for folks online to hear you. Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Frank Beal. Mayor Brawley.
Present.
Mayor Curry. Mayor Grasso.
Present.
Mayor Hofert. Nina Itamudia.
Here.
Mayor Noak. President Reinbold. Mayor Rodering.
Noak's here.
We got you, Mayor. Thank you. Joanna Ruiz.
Here.
Carolyn Schofield.
Here.
Ann Sheehan.
Here.
Matt Walsh. Jung Yoon. Leanne Redden.
Yeah.
And Dr. Mahamamadia.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Ladies
us.
and gentlemen, we do have a quorum. We'd also like to recognize a new board member taking the place of John Robertson, Jung Yu, right? Welcome, and we're happy to have you aboard and your presence and your participation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Jung, if you wanted to just share a little bit about your role and that'd be
Sure.
great.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jung. I am the Chief of Policy for the mayor. I'm very excited to support the work of CMAP. This is an incredible organization that I've leaned on many times in the past for the incredible data and research and analysis and planning work that CMAP does. So I'm very honored to step into this role and be a connection to the mayor's office in the city of Chicago. Thank you.
Thank you again. Welcome. First item on the agenda is the executive director's report.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning and welcome back from our summer recess here. I hope you all enjoyed a little bit of downtime, although it was a pretty busy summer, I'll say, at least on my end. And so fall kind of surprised me. Again, warm welcome to Jung. We're excited to have you on board. Just starting with a few activities that we've had over the summer here. We partnered with Transport Chicago Conference, where our team worked on a panel that talked about our PART report, really thinking about strategies to advance transportation decarbonization as well. Our staff traveled to Seattle over the summer to attend the National Association of Regional Councils annual conference. Our colleagues presented on our local government network, which is our way of reaching local governments across the region. And we've actually had a number of our peers reach out to us and ask us, like, how did we get this started? What are we doing? So that was really exciting and felt good for staff to be sharing some of the good work that they're doing. At the ESRI, the GIS sort of software company, at their user conference in San Diego, our team shared our Northeastern Illinois Development Database, and it was featured in an interactive map gallery, really sharing the work that we're doing with local governments in collaboration to help support our regional forecasting model. The team members were excited to be invited to talk about how that works. And then additionally, we had a ton of fun this summer hosting our 17th annual FLIP program, which introduces high school students to planning and development across our region through hands-on learning. They were able this year to go to East Garfield Park. They went and got a behind-the-scenes tour at O'Hare Airport, which I heard was really exciting. They got to work on GIS themselves and get some exposure to the tools of the planning practice here. And just proud to share that we continue to help build capacity for the next generation of regional leaders here. We've got some photos, I think, on the screen that we'll share in a minute. But finally, I think one of the other things that I did that I'll just mention here is that I gave opening remarks at the annual Transportation Asset Management Conference, a conference that brings in the state DOTs from across the country who really talk about some of the performance-based modeling tools, performance measures that we work on here at CMAP in partnership with our DOT. Also, over the summer, I did have the opportunity to sit down with almost our entire federal congressional delegation as well to share our goals, to really talk about transportation reauthorization, which we know all of the authorizing committees in DC are working on. In parallel, our team worked on developing a regional policy document for our next transportation reauthorization here. So really a unified set of principles for, again, what we want to see in the next transportation bill. We talked about safety, safe systems approach, public transportation, the importance of passenger rail, bridges, performance-based programming, our freight systems and freight funding, funding of technology for transportation across the region, and really making sure that some of those core funds that we see in Illinois that fund all of the work that you all do continue. So that we're excited to have that one regional voice document. I do believe you may have a copy at your seat, but if not, we'll get it to you. We also at the same time worked with our peers across the country on a similar shared letter of priorities for the federal transportation reauthorization. Every major metropolitan area has an organization like ours, and so we wanted to make sure that we were unified in our approach for what we care about in this next transportation bill. Many of them get funding just like we do through their states that come with federal funds to help support the implementation of projects like bridges and transit across the region. And we do see some value, again, in bringing our major metropolitan regions together because many of us have transit systems that are really important to moving people. We have freight systems that are important to moving goods and just generally quality of life issues that bring us together. Also, in July, we held a Housing Lake County program. So our team really has been working in partnership with Lake County. We got funding from the Schreiber Family Foundation to develop a whole strategy this summer to engage business leaders, elected officials, developers, and community advocates to really tackle this idea of a need for affordable housing, for market rate housing, and just in general, more housing across our region. The group hosted its first stakeholder meeting, which was attended by 110 people, including elected officials and nonprofits and employers and developers that all came to the table to really talk about how Lake County can start building buy-in to really address this housing problem head on. Again, this coalition builds on some earlier efforts that we've had across the region with Lake County and CMAP. We're excited to see this continue to move forward, and we're making sure that we are engaging our board members and hearing from them as we move forward. We're hopeful that this might be a model that we can take and replicate in other counties. And then speaking of communities, we did release a new set of community data snapshots again across our region. These are our top resource, our top hit on our websites that is used by not only local community planners, but really the press. We're often quoted as going to these resources and utilizing them as they think about how our region is changing. This year's update includes new data on uninsured populations that live in local communities, vehicle miles traveled per household, and county level development information from that Northeastern Illinois development database. So again, if you want us to come out and talk to your staff about the data that we have, information they could be using, we are more than happy to, or if you have communities that are coming to you as you're working in your local councils of governments, please don't hesitate to ask. We would love to come out and again, encourage people to utilize these resources that we have. So just a quick agenda preview before we get into the agenda. I want to just briefly highlight what's ahead for us today. We're going to begin with an amendment to the FY26 budget and work plan for your approval. One of the reasons why we are coming to you with a budget amendment and approval is because of the state funding that we were allocated. We are continuing to work with the Department of Human Services to release these funds, but we are already 3 months into a 12-month spending agreement that we don't have in hand. So at the same time, our government affairs team is working diligently to see if there is a vehicle in veto that we could move the funding source to DCEO. We've been having ongoing conversations about getting these funds moving, but we will keep the board updated as we know more on that. So the board will also consider a slate of officers for the coming year based on feedback that you all shared from the summer. And then on the information side, we're going to provide an update of the development of the Century Plan, and that'll be the primary focus of our meeting here. And finally, our government affairs team will share the latest federal and state legislative updates. Just also a couple things at your table here. You have county update snapshots here. Again, just really highlighting the work that we're doing in every part of the region, really sharing the federal transportation funding, the number of local projects that we're doing across the region, and some of the more unique specific projects that we're doing locally. We update these every so often. We went through a process of just updating these recently and wanted to get them to you. So if you have questions about them, don't hesitate again to ask myself or my team. And I also just wanted to remind you all, our next meeting is going to take place on October 8th. It will be our annual joint meeting with the MPO Policy Committee. We are working through details of where that will be located. We went over to Matt Walsh's office, Member Walsh's office. We may do it over there because we are having some technical difficulties over here. But the idea for that will really be focused again on the Century Plan. We will spend some time workshopping and getting feedback from you and the MPO at the same time on our vision for the future here. So that concludes my updates. I'm happy to take any questions or thoughts.
Any comments or questions on the executive director's report? Very good.
Okay, great.
All right, moving on to next item, which is the consent agenda, which involves the minutes of our previous meeting, along with a single procurement contract with Cook County Assessor's data as by changing our bylaws. If there aren't any questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Those two items. Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor signify by a vote of aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is technically an executive session item. As we have done in the past, there's been a recommendation as to what to do with those executive session minutes. The board has an opportunity to either go into exec session to discuss it or take the recommendation of our council regarding no need to go into exec session and take on their recommendation. So
To take action on the staff's recommendation without going into executive session.
moved and seconded. Any questions on that? Want to call the roll?
Happy to call the roll.
Actually, I can do that by voice. All in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote
Aye.
no. And the next item would be to accept the recommendation of the staff regarding the closed executive session minutes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved and seconded. Again, any questions? If not, all in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote of no. Next item is the workshop, right? Work plan?
That's right.
The budget and
No,
work plan?
budget amendment. Yeah, budget and work plan.
You want to,
Let's see. Yeah, we'll have our finance director, a deputy, come up and talk about that.
Good point, everyone. Since the board approved CMAP's budget in February, we had some positive changes that I'm here excited to present to you and ask for your approval. One item on the agenda is that we due to the uncertainty of the federal regulations, we had agreed with IDOT to make an additional $1.2 million of local match to support CMAP's operation and to provide a little bit of stability in our operations. Additionally, as Aaron had mentioned previously, we were awarded $2 million from Illinois General Assembly, and our plan is to utilize those funds for some of the non-transportation work. And last but not least, we also received $300,000 from Schreiber Philanthropy, and we partnered with the Lake County to enhance and expand the affordable housing in the Lake County. So in total, we are requesting an approval to increase our budget by $3.5 million in revenue and $2.3 million in expenses for the sub-consultants to support the work.
other questions regarding that?
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved to approve the amendment, seconded. Again, any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor signify by a vote of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, a vote
Aye.
of no, and the motion carries. Thank you. We look forward to getting you money from the state. So.
We are continuing to work on that, you know.
Next item on the agenda was the nomination of the CMAP officers. Aaron?
Yes, as we do every year per the Regional Planning Act, we are required to go back and determine who is on the executive committee here. I spoke with many of the members across the region in the past couple of weeks to get your feedback on executive committee membership. I think there was a broad consensus that there's satisfaction with the executive committee as it stands. Currently, the only proposed change that we would make for this next year would be to replace John Robertson with Jung Yoon. So with that, I'm
Is
seeking.
there a motion to approve the recommendation and nominations? So moved. Executive. Moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, all in favor, signify by a vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed, vote no, and the motion carries. And thank you for your continued support as chair of this organization. As we enter our 20th year, I couldn't be more prouder of what we've accomplished over that 20 years, and certainly look forward to this upcoming year, the capital with various capital plans going forward. So I look forward to working with this board, working with the executive committee of this board, and good things to come going forward. So thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is the Century Plan update.
That's right. So as the team gets ready to present to you this morning and we look ahead to the Century Plan here, I just wanted to start with a little bit of a look back. 20 years ago in 2005, the Illinois General Assembly passed the Regional Planning Act, creating CMAP. And one of the things that was most unique about this was really that it was a combination of business, civic, labor, government organizations coming together to say, why are we planning for our transportation system and our natural resources and our land separately? Both agencies were producing long-range plans for the region. And really, what is a transportation system but for moving people and making sure that our communities are well served? And so the leadership of the region at the time really thought that these two things were required to be one in order to make sure that we had a thriving region here. So in 2010, we developed our first regional long-range plan, Go to 2040. 4 years later, actually 8 years later, we developed On to 2050. Those plans again include our vision for the future of our region, and we play a very unique role in terms of local governments, right? We aren't sort of on the day-to-day activities, but we're really making sure that what happens today really is advancing our goals into the future, and that we're staying on that same path consistently. So we're going to share some outcomes of the previous plan here. Again, I think it's important to note that these aren't CMAP's plans. They are the region's plans, which is why we will be continuing to talk with you and the MPO about what the goals and objectives are, what you want to see in terms of outcomes. And so last meeting that we had in June, one of the questions that came up was, what has been accomplished? What have we actually done since we put 2040 together and the 2050 plan today? And so staff has been working on that diligently. I'm going to invite Elizabeth Scott up to share a bit more. I do know just quickly that we have some longstanding board members. Mayor Bennett has been with us since the beginning. Carolyn, you've been with us 12 years. Leanne's been. Frank actually worked on, I think, a lot of from the civic side, bringing CMAP together. I didn't know if before we got started, Frank or Mayor Bennett wanted to share anything about
Other than I should
20 years ago.
have mentioned it earlier to also recognize Frank Beal. He was part of the business side of putting this organization together, and all the work that went in within that first year to start from scratch with no money, and through the generosity of the civic committee to volunteer people from management, from finance, from HR to help us put together the organization, the bylaws, the structure. And then try to start out with nothing, but the work that went into forming this organization in the beginning, Frank was at the core and heat of it, and went through all those meetings, planning meetings, the strategy meetings, the organizational meetings. A lot of work went into putting this organization together, from taking the old NIPSI organization from the planning side to the Council of Mayors on the transportation side, and putting this together. And the belief back then is, how are you going to get all these people to work together? You had the city, the suburbs in the collar counties. And I think this agency has absolutely proven over the years that we can work together, that there are no boundaries, that, we all live within the metropolitan area for the good of the metropolitan area. And I think as they get into some of the details and things that we've accomplished, I again thank the original board that all the work that went into putting this thing together, and the continuation of people like Frank to stay on this with us over the years has been remarkable. This agency has been recognized with national, state, local awards for what we've done. I think we've been a model agency of how it works in the metropolitan area. There's been some highs and lows, as we all know, and maybe even a low period right now, but I think we can get through this, and working together, which is the most important thing, to take an element of a big city against suburbans and collar counties, and let us all sit down and work it out. And again, I think that has been a model we continue to push in our transportation bill, if that's possible. But I think, and the work of staff has been absolutely remarkable. This agency has really been a library of information for this region, especially with technological changes, the information, just from an information source, It has been, we've created a legacy for what we do here. It's used not only by us locally as local officials, but also the business community. Just recently as the updated demographics for our individual communities. It's a great resource to encourage economic development. Anything you need from that standpoint comes from this agency, and the outreach I think that we've had over the years to the communities, to the counties, has certainly been remarkable. The LTA grants were really the hallmark of how this agency started by receiving that initial grant from Senator Durbin, almost $3 million, a little over $3 million, to reach out immediately to the towns to say, this agency is relevant and this agency will work with you locally on your various planning or transportation needs. So it's been a 20-year remarkable period of time, and I look forward to working going forward with our new plan. Frank, you're as old as I am, so.
Certainly didn't expect that, Jerry, but I would say that your leadership during those past 20 years has been very important, in keeping it focused and keeping us on line and keeping us active. So thank you.
We've had our periods of times, and not so much internally, but external pressures that have come on this agency, whether financially or politically. We survived the storm. And again, by this board staying together and staying strong and staying in one voice, I think, we got through some of those so-called turbulent times or tough times.
I will say that when I was testifying in Springfield on behalf of the legislation that combined the two agencies, and getting a lot of pushback from some of the legislators who thought that it was totally unnecessary to do, the results have been far exceeded my expectations of what could be done here and the leadership of the board, but the staff has been absolutely fabulous in creating an organization that's servicing the entire region. So.
Yeah, one last comment. I mean, I can talk about whatever we do on this board level, but it's always been the staff that have created this agency and its legacy and its reputation. And honestly, we have been an institution of bringing in a lot of young people, from a turnover market going on all the time, that have worked as employees here and have done a remarkable job, innovation, dealing with technologies, which I think even for me are beyond my capacity at times, but it's been remarkable the work of the staff, which has led to the legacy of this agency. So I can't thank them enough, those now and those that started out with us.
Thanks for the reflections. Elizabeth?
Well, I
A
couldn't,
bit longer than your report, huh?
oh, no, and I couldn't have asked for better comments to start us off with, truly. So thank you both for sharing your reflections about the beginning of CMAP, because our discussion today, and I guess let me stop and go back. Hi, I'm Elizabeth Scott. I'm a principal policy analyst at CMAP. You're going to hear from me and my colleagues, Austin and Kasha, in sequence, because one person talking for as much as we have to say would be very long. So we're gonna rotate a little bit for you, but I'm going to kick us off. And we have a great team working here at CMAP to prepare the region's next regional plan. We told you at your last meeting before the summer break that we have named it the Century Plan. We hope by naming that to connect it to the great planning legacy of Chicago, to the Burnham legacy, and to ask in a serious way, what will this generation contribute to the future of the region? What are we going to do together that's going to put us on the right path as we move towards the 21st century? Which feels very heady, but we're 25% of the way there this year. So as our world continues to change in ways that we understand and that we don't yet know, what can we put together that is made here, made by us, that charts our path intentionally towards the future that we want? And I think that the reflections about where CMAP came from and why it was created, how we put it together, why the region has made this investment are really helpful in putting us in the right frame of mind for talking about what that looks like. So what we want is all of you to be part of charting that path with us. CMAP has a bit of, we're bringing technical expertise together, we're bringing facilitation together, but we're kind of the midwife of the plan, not the mother of the plan, if that's not too weird of a metaphor to extend. It just came to me, but it's like it's our job to bring to bring the plan forth with all of you. So it's an expression of who we are and what we want in this moment. So there's, yeah, we're not sure. Maybe I should have tried that beforehand. So anyway, we're gonna talk to you a little bit today about the ethos and approach to our two previous plans, Go to 2040 and On to 2050, to maybe, you know, we have some people who've been here since the very beginning, and we have, you know, we're welcoming Jung Yoon to her first meeting. So to cover that range of leadership that we have on the board, we want to make sure that everybody has kind of a sense of where we've been. Then we're going to transition into talking about what are some specific tangible examples of where planning has led to action that has moved the region forward. Then we're going to give you a teaser of the work that we're going to be doing when we publicly launch the plan in November with your help. And yeah, give you a sense of where we're going and what the expectations are going to be for the board and different ways to plug in and get involved as we start building this initiative. So, okay, what have we done? What can we learn about it? Let's start by talking about Go to 2040 and On to 2050. I constantly, and we'll go to the next slide, please. I'm happy always to note that we did win the National Planning Award for Go to 2040, which is a very big deal. You know, Mayor Bennett was mentioning our various awards, but this was a extremely innovative plan when it was created, viewed as a national best practice. So come with me, if you will, in a time machine to the year 2010. You know, just to create a sense of place for you, Barack Obama was halfway through his first term. The Blackhawks had just won their first Stanley Cup in 50 years. iPad debuted for the first time. Instagram was founded. Some people were starting to have smartphones. Like, this is the type of place that it, you know, was at the time. TikTok by Kesha was the top song in the nation. We can challenge everyone to sing that one out. And Inception was the top grossing movie. So it's a time that was really quite a while ago and different in terms of the pressures and ethoses that we're facing. And in terms of the policy landscape here in the region, you know, things that we were concerned about included uneven recovery from the Great Recession. You know, it was just 2 years after the trough of the 2008 recession. People were not doing well. Housing in the region was under terrific strain. We had high unemployment. There was a growing realization that our transportation infrastructure was really at a crossroads with severe aging and good repair backlog problems on the road side and the transit side. We were contending with limited funding, but our freight congestion was continuing to grow. Growing awareness that we had some assets, but also liabilities in the transportation space that we were going to need to engage more with. Similarly, this was before the Paris Accords had been passed, but there was a growing awareness in the world that our climate and environment were changing in ways that were going to be issues for us. And so early conversations around these topics, we're talking about things like sustainability, energy efficiency, open space protection, and you'll see in a second things like food independence and food systems. This is where the conversation was at the time. So 2010. So on behalf of the region, CMAP created this plan, and the main things that the Go to 2040 plan bring forward, and go to the next slide. You know, I mean, the biggest thing about it is that it was the first comprehensive plan for the larger Chicago area since the Burnham era. You know, it was the sort of first work of this new agency that the region's leaders had invested in creating. So it was very important to make a splash and to show value in what we were creating. And the 2040 plan is primarily framed around how we improve quality of life, economic competitiveness, and sustainability here in the region. And it was divided into 4 focus areas: livable communities, human capital, efficient governance, regional mobility. And some of the, you know, these are planning themes, but I think part of how things are framed and discussed and where the emphasis is does evolve over time. And it's in those spaces where we start to make difference on policy issues, how people think about things, conceive of things, what's top of mind when they're thinking, what do we need to do on this or that issue? And so the next slide, the key priorities from 2040 were to prioritize major infrastructure investment. So one of the big sort of best practices brought forth by CMAP is this idea of performance-based programming. It's the idea that when we make capital investments or other investments of other kinds, that we should use a data-informed, transparent, accountable process rather than one that perhaps is more political in nature or takes other things. We wanted to create a more data-informed, clear, and transparent process for making these choices for the region. So this was a big emphasis of the 2040 plan. We talk a lot in that space about coordinated land use and transportation planning. This is a lot of the value that our local technical assistance team was able to bring forth with support from the Obama administration. We got the Sustainable Communities Grant, so that was a HUD, EPA, DOT partnership that allowed us to start that program, which we'll hear more about a little bit later. But kind of part of the idea was to support communities with what they need, but help bring forward more coordinated land use and transportation planning in the region, as well as protecting and securing our open space and natural resources. We have been talking about sustainable tax policy since the very, very beginning, because it's critically important to what communities are able to do in the region. The 2040 plan also struck out into discussions of workforce, education, and food system needs. We had a partnership with the Chicago Community Trust to explore these issues and understand how they were showing up in the region and what we might be able to do together on them. Some of these things for us have fallen off a little bit over the years, but other organizations have picked up insights that were generated through this process and carried them forward. And I talked about the commitment to performance-based evaluation of projects. So that's like the top line sort of stuff that was coming out of this plan. So next slide. So get back in the time machine. We're now going to the year 2018. Donald Trump was halfway through his first term. Smartphones have become ubiquitous. Ride sharing, streaming, and social media were shaping culture in ways that feel really familiar to us now, but were more emerging then. We were building the Riverwalk in downtown Chicago. Like Divvy and e-bikes were being introduced kind of for the first time. And the top song in the nation was God's Plan by Drake. And Avengers Infinity War was this top grossing movie. So it was not that long ago, but also it was a really long time ago, particularly when you think about the experience of COVID and how it has really significantly reshaped our communities. Okay, so some of the policy issues that we were trying to react to at the time were we were also in the second or third year of the Rauner administration, so 2 full years of no state budget, the longest that had ever taken place in the country, and dealing with the challenges to the organization, but also to the region because funds were not flowing forward in a variety of ways. Mounting budget pressure, concerns about municipal revenues, uncertainty about the federal funds coming to the region, continuing concern about aging infrastructure, but it's kind of getting to a higher pitch here as our assets were continuing to age in the sort of 8 years between when we adopted Go to 2040 and on to 2050. And the region was starting to understand what climate change was going to mean for us in terms of more intense and frequent storms that were driving flooding of all kinds. And so these things were starting to show up in communities in a way that was more tangible for people, and they were wanting to discuss them. Additionally, uneven recovery from the Great Recession really brought forward an equity conversation in this region and an insistence from many stakeholders that disinvestment that we see in some communities needed to be addressed in a comprehensive and thoughtful way. And so this is the context in which we made the Onto 2050 plan. Next slide, please. And so Onto 2050, you know, was a CMAP's kind of second plan on behalf of the region. And it really reflected demographic change, the economic challenge of the region, emerging climate realities. I am coming up on 10 years at CMAP, and so I was here for this part, and it was a 3-year process with many of you to develop the ideas that were brought forward in Onto 2050. We made like 27 position papers and a gazillion snapshots and had a ton of stuff that we were doing. And what it structured around was really 3 core principles. One, inclusive growth. It's the idea that everybody does better when everybody does better. Is that we can grow together by helping people participate in and benefit from the economy and the opportunities that we have here in the region. Resilience, that we need to be prepared for climate change, fiscal uncertainty, technological disruption. We need to be resilient to the challenges that are coming forward for us. And then a continued drumbeat of CMAP's classic message of we have limited resources. We have to be really thoughtful and prioritized about how we invest them. So those were the kind of like the top line pieces coming out of that plan. Next slide, please. And so the key priorities we expressed through Onto 2050 is the need to modernize and maintain the transportation system. This is, you know, hear more about this in a second. This was essentially immediately prior to the state taking action to introduce the Rebuild Illinois Capital Plan. So this is shaped by the pre-capital plan environment in the region. We talk a lot in this plan about advancing climate mitigation and adaptation, the need to promote inclusive housing and community development, different types of housing in different types of communities all across the region to meet people's needs and expectations. Continuing work to address the fiscal sustainability of both municipalities, the region, and the state. Ethos of wanting to embed equity and resilience principles into all of CMAP's actions and planning work going forward. And then a continued commitment to using data to drive decision makings to inform and help sharpen the decision-making processes that we own at CMAP, but also other things that are happening throughout the region. So they're kind of, the 2 plans are kind of different in form, but hopefully you can see how they in some ways were responding to the time that they were made. Because part of what we're asking for your help with is to understand the time that we're in now and what is it that we need to do that will be responsive to the time, to this moment. So we're going through a process of trying to understand that basically right now and hopefully with your help. So with that, I will turn it to my colleague, Kasha, who's going to give us some specific examples of things that have been achieved.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. Kasha Hart, principal with our Intergovernmental Affairs team. Going to keep you in the time machine for a little bit longer, but I promise we will get to the future soon. So we wanted to give you that kind of history and that context, have that in mind as we kind of walk through some examples of successes from Go to 2040 and on to 2050. And when we talk about plan successes, you know, the document itself, yes, is one thing, but, you know, this is also inclusive of the process of building these plans and coming together as a region, CMAP, you all of our partners and implementers to decide on what our regional priorities are and how we will take action on them. So let's jump to the next slide and dig in. So Elizabeth took us back to 2010 when considering the context of Go to 2040. Again, this is the age of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which helped fuel those economic headwinds following the Great Recession. Part of this time was an influx of federal funding opportunities available to local governments to support local economic development, housing, transportation. However, to be eligible for these funds, in many cases, communities had to indicate that they had a comprehensive plan or some other kind of local plan done in order to receive access to those funds. So to expand access to federal funding opportunities and support local governments in their efforts to implement regional priorities locally, Go to 2040 called for the creation of new grants and technical assistance opportunities designed to support local governments specifically in this way. And as Mayor Bennett and Elizabeth noted, this is, really what catalyzed the creation of CMAP's technical assistance program with support from the Sustainable Communities Grant. Since then, since 2011, we have advanced 300 projects in the region, and these projects have helped unlock tens of millions of dollars in state and federal funds for the region. And this is really the exact message that we've been carrying to the General Assembly over the past few years, as we have been talking about, seeking additional funding to support the growth of our technical assistance program. An investment in CMAP is an investment in the region, and the work that we do with municipalities, not only facilitates that priority setting, but also is a necessary precursor to securing funding to implement those priorities. So I just want to pause here for one moment. Many of you have had an opportunity to work with us on different technical assistance initiatives, whether it's in your community, your county, at sub-regional level. So just wanted to pause here and see if anyone wanted to speak about any of the project work that you've had the opportunity to work with us on.
I think I have one of the best examples. In McHenry County, we did the shared service coordinator, and that was able to tie everyone within McHenry County together and optimize utilization of resources and really work together. And that is a model, has not only been a model for the state, but we've gone national with that model as well, and had presented at conferences. It's exemplary. And it's had a huge cost savings to the local municipalities as well.
Matt, I know we're doing some work with you in Montgomery.
Yeah, we've actually, I think this is our third, oh, sorry. It is not. This is our third LTA that we were working on. We did one with Oswego and Yorkville on shared services in the past, which has been fruitful for our residents to see some savings. We also did our UDO with CMAP, which has been, that's a process in and of itself for sure. But to streamline everything, in one plan has been very helpful. And then right now we're working on a plan with CMAP to look at specific downtown development or redevelopment opportunities that could be a catalyst for our downtown, which has been ailing for maybe 50 years now. So we've seen kind of the gamut of very different things that are immediate cost savings and then also planning for the future.
Yeah, I think there are many stories to be told as we all represent COGS or the counties, certainly going back to your own group that you represent. The great thing about the LTA was spread across the entire region. So there wasn't one region that did not have an opportunity or were given an opportunity to be afforded the grants or the federal funding that came from that. So I think again, we represent our various regions. You can go back and find many stories of what's happened over the last, 10, since 2010 to see the impact of that money into our sub-regions.
Hey, Nina here. I just want to uplift that when I worked at the city of Chicago, there was a few projects and coordinating projects that we worked on with LTA. But more generally, just as a practitioner, I want to lift up that strategically, this is a better way to make sure that resources are not only just being allocated, because it's one thing to say, we're going to give $1 million towards X, Y, and Z, right? I worked on the American Rescue Plan with the city of Chicago, and it's like, yeah, what happens when you get $250 million in your lap, but the community doesn't have the capacity to either take it on, do the research, to actually implement and get projects out the ground. And so I think this for CMAP and for our like counterparts around the country to not only release money, but to also have the technical assistance to say, how do you bring that money in? How do you use it? How do you use data to make decisions? And then also long-term systems change. And so I think that's, and this is an example of how that has worked. And I think we should uplift it as that, as a way of saying like, not only are we doing something special in our region, but other people should also follow suit. And I think the city of Chicago, they have an Elevated Works program, which is a TA program that helps to support our grantees who got grants for development. But right, whether you're a chef or you're, a business owner, you probably don't know how to do construction, or you don't know what data to look at, and having those TA programs helps them be more successful. So I just want to uplift that as like I think this is a good structural way for us to continue to think about our work and have more impact.
I want to echo what everyone else said and agree. Also, the fact that this program has been fantastic in really identifying those places and communities or areas that simply do not have the resources to do basic planning. Basic comprehensive planning, long-term planning, strategic planning allows them then to tap into other resources potentially. And this type of program then places our region as a whole in a better position to go after future funding as well, and then do it effectively. I think most people will be surprised how many locations throughout the region never even had a comp plan. And very large locations throughout our region. So I can't say enough about this. I think it's one of the best things that we do here.
Great. Thank you all. Yeah, fabulous to hear all of your stories about, our technical assistance work, just offering another example to kind of amplify a lot of what we talked about in terms of efficient use of resources and maximizing impact to the region. Also just wanted to offer the example of the Illinois International Port District Master Plan. That was another product of our technical assistance program. And again, it's specifically aligned with supporting a regionally identified priority in onto 2050 of maintaining the region's status as North America's freight hub. So to help implement this recommendation, we worked with the Port District to complete a master plan that reimagined the future of the 1,800 acres on the site for active industry and multimodal shipping operations. And in turn, again, going back to that maximizing resources, this helped secure $34 million in federal funding to rebuild the Calumet River dock alongside state and Cook County investments. So leveraging investments from multiple places. Kind of, continuing on the theme of maximizing resources to the region, our technical assistance program is certainly one significant way that we effectuate change and work together to identify and implement those regional priorities that have surfaced through our planning processes. The state is also another really critical actor in moving these priorities forward. So on to 2050, as Elizabeth reminded us, was developed at a time when the region and really the state's transportation funding challenges were coming to a head. Existing revenues were insufficient to meet needs. We faced a growing backlog of maintenance projects. To respond to this need, onto 2050 recommended implementation of sustainable, adequate revenue sources for transportation. That is a common refrain that we'll continue to say here at CMAP. But by working together to put forward this recommendation, the plan helped catalyze a policy conversation that yielded critical legislative action in Rebuild Illinois. So specifically, for the first time in decades, the state raised the motor fuel tax and indexed it to inflation, which provided the state and the region with critical resources to address our infrastructure needs. And additionally, 20% of new motor fuel tax revenues were set aside for transit capital needs, which similarly faced a growing maintenance backlog, ongoing capital needs, as we all know. So just next slide, please. Again, continuing on the theme of how we move our plans to implementation, thinking about strategic allocation of resources. So Rebuild Illinois helped make that change across the state, but there's also opportunity to consider how the resources that the region has available, via CMAP and our MPO capacity can be allocated in a way that supports regional goals. So on to 2050 noted that we take a leadership role in coordinating state and federal investments. This was in part to really maximize the tools that we have at our disposal to provide dedicated funding to advance our regional transportation priorities. So the priorities of On to 2050 have continually informed our project selection methodology for the shared fund. And just a little quick side history on the shared fund. As a reminder, this is one of our federal funding sources, the Surface Transportation Program, which is sub-allocated to our Council of Mayors. In 2018, CMAP created the SDP Shared Fund, which takes up to 15% of our federal SDP funds, and then those are programmed by the SDP program Project Selection Committee. And so this fund is really specifically intended to adopt a performance-based approach to advance those regionally identified transportation priorities, spur collaboration between our implementers. So On to 2050 has helped us continually refine our project selection criteria to align with our regional goals. So just one example of this is moving from a purely high crash-based safety scoring criteria to instead looking more closely at the types of crashes and specific ways in which we can serve vulnerable road users in the region. So just wanted to highlight a couple of different projects that the shared fund has supported. Some examples of taking these resources, moving them into implementation. We've removed barriers to bicyclist and pedestrian facilities, funding 3 different overpasses throughout the region. This includes Route 83 in Elmhurst, Mellis Meadows in Mount Prospect, and 74th Street in Summit. The program is also supporting the replacement of aging infrastructure across the region, including bridge replacements in Chicago and Elgin. And I learned that the shared fund is also part of the funding for the ongoing construction right outside our door on Canal Street. So you walked through the implementation of our plans on your way to the office today. Perhaps we should highlight that once the project is complete. I recognize that. But again, it's planning in action. Additionally to, I'll just note that through the establishment of the shared fund, we also partnered with IDOT to enable the use of toll credits as non-federal match to help high-need communities. So we don't want local match requirements to be a barrier to advancing these regionally identified priorities. All right, last example that we wanted to highlight for you all today, just kind of another pathway for change that we have here as a region is really leveraging the power of convening and setting those regional tables as a place for building a commitment to take shared action on regional priorities. I know regional economic development has a long and storied history here in Northeastern Illinois. That's a separate presentation, but the ongoing need for the region has been to identify a one-stop shop for doing business in Northeastern Illinois. So On to 2050 called for the creation of an entity with the mandate and the resources to implement a regional economic growth strategy. And this provided the foundation for CMAP to partner with counties, the city of Chicago, and Rural Business Chicago on the creation of the Greater Chicagoland Economic Partnership, which has seen tremendous success in its first year, in its first few years of existence. Just in its first year alone, GSIP collaborated with the business community to make 64 pro-Chicagoland decisions, including many businesses relocating, expanding in the region, resulting in over $715 million workers' earnings and over 8,000 jobs in the region. GSIP also helped secure a multi-billion-dollar investment to build the nation's first commercially viable quantum computer campus on Chicago's south side. So continuing to see the impacts of that today. So next slide, please. I hope taking a step back, bearing with us in this time machine to see what the region has accomplished through Go to 2040, On to 2050, has you energized and motivated about the power of change that regional plans have and really what the process of coming together to build those plans can have in the region. As you heard, Go to 2040, On to 2050 were also developed during significant inflection points in our society. I think between On to 2050 and now, between 2018 and now, how many times have we heard that we are living in unprecedented times? It is another one of those significant inflection moments that we find ourselves in. And this is really where regional planning brings value. It affords us the opportunity to take stock of where we are, where we want to go, and how do we utilize our collective strengths to get there. I know you all are already thinking about this because we had the chance over the summer to connect with you all, to hear more about your priorities and aspirations for the Century Plan, how best it can serve the region. So to orient us, to start to transition us to the future, I'm going to move us to present day. And just we wanted to offer a couple of takeaways that we heard from our conversations with you all about your priorities for the Century Plan. So when we asked, we asked you all to complete the sentence. My vision for my community, my region in 2060 is X. Economic growth, vitality, and competitiveness was one of the most common through lines in our conversations. Really, we heard a lot about the importance of a thriving regional economy. We also heard support and interest and prioritization from you all to address other longstanding priorities in the region around transportation, around climate, and freight issues as well. Beyond these issues, many of you also elevated the importance of focusing on people, on focusing on communities. So there's a lot of comments about the interconnectedness of our region, whether that be around our infrastructure systems, our regional economy, or just community writ large. We also heard a desire for the Century Plan to be bold, actionable, and achievable. So balancing our bold aspirations with a thought towards implementation. And finally, I mean, this echoes, how Erin opened our conversation today. We heard a desire to lean into CMAP's unique regional voice. So the importance of elevating regional priorities, laying the groundwork for action on shared commitments, providing a respected, neutral, data-informed forum for discussion of issues of regional significance. And again, back to that interconnectivity, making connections between seemingly disparate, maybe less understood policy areas. I'm sorry, that's the next slide. So we can go one more slide. So with that is enough for me. I'm eager to turn it to you all with this history in mind, a refresher on what we talked about over the summer. We'd like to open it up for what stories resonated with you the most, any reflections you have on that, on where we've been, and what are some pathways for change moving forward.
Thank you, Kasha. Yeah, go right ahead if you wouldn't mind pulling the mic closer. We're hearing from folks online that if you just make sure the mic's in front of you while you're speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. You all see us well, this is working, okay. For the actually just great presentation and also a great summary of actually what has been done. You guys mentioned actually the plans are amazing, actually just, award winning, not just, in this region nationally, and I would say even internationally, because looking into all the way going through history, you guys talked about Burnham Plan. I don't have a copy of that Burnham Plan, but I have actually just original copies of the CADS models in 1950s and 60s that I took actually to class. I take in the classes that I teach actually travel demand modeling, forecasting. Actually I took it this Monday to class, showed to students. And this is actually just the plan that's internationally recognized as the first, travel demand model everywhere developed in the world. And people actually just recognize it. This has been done here in Chicago. And looking into actually just 2040 plan and 2050 plans, this is, and all those projects actually just my colleagues actually mentioned, just we see that the impacts of those are amazing. But I would actually just want to ask a question, whether we are going back to the original goals of those plans. We talked about actually just, in the first presentation, part of the presentation, we talked about those original goals for 2040 was actually just livable communities, efficient governance, efficient mobility. How much we have achieved, moving toward actually just having a livable communities. We talked about efficient and performance-based measures to see actually how much we are achieving those goals. I would actually encourage CMAP staff to actually just look into those, coming up with some performance measures to see how much we have achieved toward those main goals. These are all 300 something actually projects are amazing. Actually, just locally, we have seen the impacts actually my colleague mentioned, but it will be very interesting to see that, how much we have got closer to that livable communities, to efficient mobility. And we are halfway through 2040 from 2010 to actually, and 5 years through actually the 2050 plan to see actually just if we need to, we talked about all these changes, technologically, actually just, and many other actually just factors that have changed. If we need to adjust things, we need to actually just recalibrate the plan. That's the time. Sorry.
Doctor, if I can address part of that, is that I think the great thing about CMAP over the years has been an education method or model for all of us, because performance-based efficiencies, things were talked about that back then. And that was a goal of this agency, was to rebuild or reestablish, how we're going forward with things like performance-based. In the beginning, we had pushback from the state of Illinois. You talked about the political aspect of it. There was a lot of political pushback on us because they wanted to do things the old way. Hey, this guy's got a project, get it in there. And we had many battles over that to establish that. And then finally then, the state of Illinois itself, Department of Transportation, recognizing and then now establishing performance-based projects. So it was more of an education back then and the building of that education. So things that we assume now weren't. So I'm getting towards an accomplishment, I think, of what we've done. Efficiencies in government. We all know that as mayors, a learning process that goes on, how to get by with less money and do things with less money, how to, work with each other, again, in certainly in the planning stage, because there's a lot of interconnectability of municipalities, one with the other, that we had cooperative projects, working with county highway departments or state highway departments and collaborating in intergovernmental agreements. A lot of that was not around back then. So things that we assume now have now been in our vocabulary. And I think the question for us is as we did in the beginning, Frank, right? What's the vision for our region? And we spend many hours trying to think of Burnham, make no small plans. And I think that's a challenge for us as we address the century plan. Not that we're going to come up with crazy things, but there is a rainbow of small to large, and for all of us to consider what we're going to come to collaboratively as to how that vision we see from the bottom up, right, John, from our cities up to the counties and to the state, how we vision our region changing, meeting the challenges of the future, how we change it, how we go about it, and again, with all these different categories, again, climate, things that weren't talked about years ago. So I think for all of us to think about those kind of things as we develop this plan going forward. And your input is important because it's coming from all sectors, as we sit at this table, of representative government and from the business community. And I think as we've accomplished the things, we will do it again with your help.
And I'll share one of the first deliverables, aside from engaging you in sort of the vision, is really an understanding of where have we been since 2010. So what's our open space look like? How many units of housing do we have across the region? How long does it take for people to get to job centers across the region? So you're sort of teeing us up here for what is to come in terms of quantifying the way the landscape has changed over the past few decades. And we will certainly get into that. So it's coming. It's actively being worked on is maybe what I should say.
Yeah, I just kind of want to say something off of what you said, which, reality is these are always living documents, and we live in a real-time world where the realities on the ground change often. The economy changes, the hurdles that we have to face change, the challenges change, the positives change. I mean, and so, wasn't that long ago, we weren't really talking heavily about data centers. Now we got to talk about data centers and their impact on our development throughout the region. So these things are always living documents. I mean, one of the most important things is that we identify that, and sometimes those goals can change within that document because the parameters by which those goals could be met have changed as well. So, we always need to be a little nimble because we live in a real-time world right now. So.
My comments are, I really like the framing of the presentation, especially with the context of what was happening during the time and kind of how the plan was shaped by that, because I do think that that is a big part of how we're going to shape this plan right now. Obviously, we are in a lot of turmoil at the federal level. And in a state, we're in a state in which a lot of the things that we care about, our values, inclusive planning, all of these different things are not necessarily being deprioritized and attacked at the federal level. So like, how is this plan, and this is more a theoretical question, not a question I need you to answer right now, responding to that, right? And thinking about local power, which a lot of our community-based organizations have already said for decades, right? This is, for a lot of people, this is not something new, but I think the level of impact is greater, it's felt greater. So just like in COVID, we're seeing people's eyes open a little bit wider. So how can we establish more of a grassroots kind of oriented? And I love that being people-centered is in kind of the descriptions, but emphasizing that as a tool. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about as a practitioner is how we go from the art of change to the science, right? We know the art. People see change happen, but they don't know how it happens. And so when chaos ensues, people get frazzled because they don't know step 1, step 2, step 3 of how do you concentrate on what's in front of me. What do I have, the ability to change or like enable, and then focus on that, and like all of those things being interconnected. So I want to make sure that the kind of science behind the changes that we're trying to make and how we've established change and looked at performance metrics from previous plans is highlighted and kind of brought out in the plan, because I do think that that is going to help bring a lot of certainty and security in a time of a lot of chaos. And then there was something else I wanted to say, and I have lost my thought. Data, duh. There obviously are a lot of issues with the data that we typically get from the federal government. How is CMAP / other organizations who work in government, because my organization works with government and works in data, going to ensure that our constituents feel like the data that we have is accurate, trustworthy, and has validity to then inform the decisions that we plan on making? And that is something that we have to confront in this moment and talk about, because we're going to have to start relying on ourselves. And what I mean by ourselves is like at local governments and at the state level, and maybe even with regional partners, data sets that are accurate, based in science, and will help us move forward. And so I want to make sure that that also does not get lost as we think about how we want, what data we're using or saying is being helpful to shifting public policy.
I would just have 2 comments. The first is being mindful of the length of time that it takes to get from planning to execution. We have right now needs in our community, so we don't have time to spend years and years on planning. We need to get to execution faster. And then the second thing is also, how are you measuring the impact of the project on the local community? Are you actually going into each individual community and ensuring that these projects are doing what they're supposed to do for the region and the local municipality? That's great.
I just want to share the kudos towards the CMAP team. Just love your reports, love your presentation, love the data that's available. Very much appreciative of all the hard work that's going into this as we move forward. What really struck me was the slide from, is it Go to 2040, where we talked about the priority of quality of life, economic competitiveness, and sustainability. We can't boil the ocean, and I love bold and big moves, but I also want us to hearken back to what are the true priorities. Again, as the representative of Lake County, I'm thinking of my transit deserts. I'm thinking of the quality of life. I'm thinking of the challenges that people continue to have in getting to school, getting to work, getting to the doctor, living in a place where they want to be near family, but not being able to afford that. As we've had these public transit conversations, I am constantly telling my dear Chicago colleagues, we too have poor people in the suburbs, and we need to be able to meet the needs of everybody in the region. So as much as I love boldness, and I know we have a lot that we're trying to achieve, I just ask us to kind of keep our mission on quality of life and economic stability and sustainability, because I know that those are the things that really impact us on a day-to-day basis. Thanks.
Thank you, Kasha. We've got just a little bit more in this presentation. We want to give you some insight. So if we could, Austin, join us up here.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning.
I have to adjust things because I am unfortunately a little taller than Kasha. I'm mindful of our time together this morning, so I'm going to try to move pretty quickly, but certainly stop me if there are any comments. First, we have this strong legacy to build on, and we're really proud of it, but we want to continue to innovate. And so as you all know, unlike our previous comp plans that really tried to capture the broad aspirations of the region, we are taking a new approach to supplying the Century Plan. The idea is to provide a new vision for the region that focuses on the top line policy guidance that will lead efforts over the next 8 to 10 years. And then there'll be a series of sort of strategic initiatives or action plans that follow along that are a little bit more nimble and a little bit more responsive to specific funding opportunities. So I think this was one of the emphases that we heard from you, is that we wanted to be more nimble, more strategic. Yes, we want to have the broad aspirations, but what is the short list, the 3 to 5 sort of top line agenda items for this region? Next slide. So there are a lot of ways to try to get that vision together. As Kasha mentioned, we want it to be bold, actionable, and achievable. And in order to do that, we need to do a combo of sort of information and coordination, which is what CMAP does best, information and coordination. Right now, we're really focused on information. So what is the wide end of the funnel? Trying to think about things like regional trend analysis, strategic foresight, or what you might call scenario planning, doing some local plan reviews to understand what are local priorities and strategies, and then the early engagement with you and partners and stakeholders around what is sort of bubbling up across the region. After the November 4th event, our State of the Region event, that will all continue, and we will on-ramp some additional events and activities that are really focused on translating the information into ideas. And that will sort of allow us to go further down the funnel from the conceptual into what are the actual specific issues that are on our policy agenda. And then that will bring us into a draft of the Century Plan in 2027 that will be presented for you and to the public for comment. Next slide, please. So first, we are looking at trends. As we mentioned in May, and as Aaron mentioned earlier, we are completing a report that will be released later this fall. That is trying to address a range of topics in demographics, the environment, the economy, transportation, various quality measures in our different urban systems. And as you'll know from talking to local residents, it's often very difficult to talk about the far future when, as Mayor Curry mentioned, people have sort of concerns and questions today. And so what we find is it's very useful for us to sort of create a space where people can get their concerns and their frustrations out on the table to make sure that they're being considered. And this sort of regional trend analysis allows us to sort of capture that. It also allows us to define the sandbox a little bit. There are a lot of public issues in, say, public health or public education that aren't really related to our built environment and to our urban systems. So they fall outside of CMAP's purview. So a regional trend analysis also allows us to sort of like draw the sandbox a little bit and say, like, these are the topics that are really coming forward in our space that we can work on together. And we want to acknowledge the other areas where people have concerns or frustrations. So for example, on the screen, you can see, we can go back one slide, some new data on urban flood susceptibility. That is a sort of recurring problem as our climate changes. So we know that heavy rainfall events where we get 8 inches over a 12-hour period, those have increased over time, and it's a major issue, particularly in Cook and Chicago, where they have, flood susceptibility indexes, maybe say twice the score of other areas. But you also see areas in Joliet, Aurora, Waukegan pop out. And these are in addition to some of the riverine flooding. So this is just one snapshot of some of the data that we're going to be presenting this fall. Next slide, please. Great. So we are also using strategic foresight to explore different future scenarios. So thinking about the far future, what could be changing our trajectory. And there are trying to understand taking a structured approach to understand what could change our trajectory over the long term. And particularly thinking about how that shifts the fundamental market for public services and for infrastructure as residents come to our systems and need to and show up in different ways. So you can see here some of the drivers of change and major shifts that we're starting to explore. It's a bit of wonky terminology, but essentially is thinking on the left around what are the slow-moving deep forces that are sort of guiding and shaping change in our world. So you'll probably recognize some of the common anxieties that people are raising locally around environmental precarity, economic fragility, particularly as some of the fundamentals in our economy are changing, rapid tech advancement, things like that. On the right, you'll also see some of the ideas we're exploring on how these drivers are actually, where they are taking us. And in particular, how some of these trends are actually pulling in different directions at once. So really think about what does it look like to live in a sort of post-normal future. So just as one quick example, we see some trends towards a healthier society, things like a longer lifespans, pharmaceutical advancements, greater acceptance of mental health. But we also see trends away from a healthy society. So things like more frequent pandemics. We know a lot about that now, don't we? More food insecurity and increases in chronic diseases. And I think it's important to note here that some of these issues I was saying earlier are not necessarily under CMAP's expertise, but we want to take an intentionally broad look at how people are coming to our, say, transit system, how users are coming to our housing system. And so trying to think what are the sort of background issues that we need to be cognizant of as we put a plan together for the future. Next slide. And then finally, I wanted to highlight some of the work we're doing on local plan reviews. So one of the things we've heard is that we want CMAP to sort of maintain local flexibility around these plans while increasing regional impact. So we will be reviewing local plans to see what issues are bubbling up around the region, what priorities or principles local governments have already identified, and then putting those together to say, where can we add and lift up existing ideas? And our goal here is to learn from the many different initiatives that are already underway and to integrate the best ideas into things that can be brought to scale in a unified regional approach. So one very quick example here, we did some of this work under the RTP, the Regional Transportation Plan, and we're already seeing local communities start to put an increased emphasis on a systems-wide approach to local transportation planning, think about mobility, yes, but also connectivity and accessibility. We're also seeing more emphasis on system reliability. People really want to know that however long it's going to take me to get to work, that is a reliable time frame that I can plan around every day. And we're also seeing how staffing and capacity constraints are continuing to mean that some improvements aren't necessarily being brought to scale. So how can things like our technical assistance work continue to evolve to meet the current needs? So those are just some of the ideas that are going to be in our funnel as we're moving towards the draft plan over the next year and a half. I believe I'm handing it back over to Elizabeth to talk about the board's role in all of this.
I'm not. Thanks, Austin. So I'm gonna wrap it up for us. So we've gone in, we've gone in the time machine, we've gone around in a few spaces for the conversation today, but what I want to really concretize for you today is what's going to happen next. So over the next year, we're doing the public launch of this project at our November 4th event. More on that in a second. But around this time next year, probably October next year, we are going to be bringing to you a plan preview report that summarizes a lot of what we've learned, having a lot of regional conversations over the next year, what our data analysis and policy research is suggesting are issues that are coming forward for the region. And so, we are looking for that to be a highly curated, short list of high impact ideas to share with you in that time frame. So this is a bit of a different approach for us, because I think you could say in both the Go to 2040 and On to 2050 plans, there are a lot of ideas, a lot of ideas. And that's wonderful and has been helpful and is really beautiful. But this time around, we are really trying to curate a short list of ideas to really get the region organized around and get our energy around. So the process of the next year is going to be to figure out what that is. And we have some you know, early thoughts, but it's gonna be through facilitating a process with all of you, going out into the community and talking to people about what's resonating locally, and kind of like bringing it all together that we're really able to figure out what that looks like. So just understanding, like, yes, you're gonna hear about this at board meetings. We're also gonna have events in every sub-regional council that are tailored to the local concerns and considerations there, and trying to facilitate a little bit more smaller scale, more detailed conversations about the challenges that people are facing and what they need the region to do for them. Because I think a good way to think about this is, what are some pieces, but for regional action, we might not succeed at? You know, what are some things that are going to require us to work together to bring the ideas to scale, to really implement them in a way that moves us forward? So among all of the things that are important in our communities, there are some things that are particularly well-suited to regional action, and that's the list that we're trying to get together and where we want to put our energy. So 1 year's time, we're going to bring you the early picture of what those ideas look like. So we're really going to need your help in the intervening time to make sure that that is the right list of things. And so, yeah, we're going to be doing a lot. Like I said, we're coming out to the community. We're going to be with you at every board meeting. Next slide, please. But our first ask of you is that when the board and the MPO come together for your joint meeting in October, next month, we're bringing in our scenario planning consultants from Canada. These are some very interesting people, Kerr Smith Designs, who are professional scenario planners who look at the future. They do this with, they've done it with the City of Toronto, they've done it with Porter Airlines, they do it with private sector clients, they do it with public sector. Most of their work to this point has been in Canada, but we've been very impressed with them. So we brought them here to work with us to help us think differently about how we consider the future. So we're gonna have a workshop with you all and the MPO members with Kerr Smith that is gonna really start to get into some of these things about how do we understand what the future might hold for us? And within that range and variety of things, how do we pick out the things that are really gonna matter for us? What's gonna put us on that like beneficial future trajectory versus not, where we put our energy. And so we're gonna have 90 minutes with you all, either before or after your formal meeting, which we're still figuring that out exactly. But it will be a workshop, and we ask that you make the time to participate. You know, we know that it's a lot of time, but this will be the first kind of touch for you all to get more in deep with the team as we're starting to build what these ideas look like. And then the next thing that's coming is we are going to have a really amazing event celebrating CMAP's 20th anniversary, the launch of the Century Plan, and doing our periodic State of the Region activity. So we will be all over the second floor of the old post office, and it's going to be more of a gosh, I don't even know if I should say anything about it. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be really different from anything we've ever done before. Super fun. You want to say something?
I was just going to say, we need to
Wrap it up?
yeah,
Street fair.
Okay.
thank you. A street fair.
A street fair, more of a street
In the
fair.
old
Anyway,
post
more to
office.
come. But yeah, please attend the workshop. And if you haven't registered for our November 4th event, please do.
Thank
Paula.
you.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, it's, at the last meeting was, Mayor Grasso, asked myself and staff to take a look at attendance, in particular, going over the last year. I want to make a big deal out of this. I think I've preached as much as I can, the importance of all the board members to be present at a meeting. We only meet now 9 times a year. We take a couple of months off in the summer. We're all coming up in December. That's why you asked to be on this board. And all I can ask you is to please be at these meetings. It is, as you all know, and it's been frustrating at times, that we weren't able to get a quorum, and a quorum means in attendance. Although people are available on Zoom, that's good, that at least everybody's participating, but the continuity of that and the numbers over the last year or last 2 years?
2 years.
Last 2 years, you can see it pretty significant, and that's why we have struggled at times. We don't need to do that. And we're all adults here. We all wanted to be on this board, And again, I ask all of you to please attend in person. There's going to be times I agree, but to get used to just doing Zoom is not a good thing. So as we all know, we like to be face to face, and certainly coming up this year with a century plan and your input. Again, you represent an entire region, so your input is critical to be here at these meetings to express your concern or concerns going forward. So again, I don't want to get into a whole lecture of this thing. The point of it was being is that, you know, if the continuation goes on, we are going to have to seriously address it with either policy or something, but it's important that we all be here. Amen? Amen. Moving on to the legislative update. We have a short report or no report.
Oh, there isn't too much going on, given that the General Assembly is not in session right now. We will be closely monitoring what's going on in veto session. We are also really closely taking a look at what's happening at the federal level as we think about the transportation bill reauthorization. Again, for our region and regions like ours, making sure that we are still able to have funding not only for our roads and bridges, but for our transit system at the federal level, that we have the flexibility to flex funds, that we're thinking about performance measures. I think we all can agree that there were lots of grant programs, and maybe that made that overly complicated, but we don't want to see the dollars reduce that come to all of our regions. And so, again, a little bit more on the federal side right now that we've been paying attention to, but as soon as we come back and the legislature is back in session, we will closely be monitoring what's happening at the state level as well.
Yes, in fact, we will meet
That's your
before
update.
we will meet one more time before the veto session, or not veto, veto session. So,
Yeah.
moving on, under any other
Other
business
business?
before the board? The executive committee is going to meet in this room, so we ask, as soon as this meeting's over, that everybody clear out so we can get this meeting going. And
We do have public comment, just
Yes.
in case.
under public comment,
We do have Garland Arm.
Garland, you on there?
Yes, Mayor Bennett, how you doing? It's
I am
Garland
doing well,
Armstrong,
Garland.
formerly of Des Plaines in Elmwood Park, now living in Des Moines. You probably heard about last month about the passing of my mother. It was cerebral hemorrhage and the back of her head bleeding, and I'm still shaken up after what happened last month. So
Our
I just want-
condolences, Garland.
yeah, so I just want to give kudos to CMAP for sending me cards, still thinking about me, and it's still up in the air when I'm going to be able to come for the memorial. So I'll keep you posted on it. But I just want you to know that people with disabilities there, we need some communications so that they can understand about CMAP, because there are some who, yeah, because they have no idea about how it really works, so that they can be a part of it. So I think they need a lot of help on it, because there are some new people who really don't know about it. Yeah, so I just want you to know about that. So it's a good thing that they have an ADA there to help out on it, and making sure that they can translate it in other languages too, because there are some who cannot speak clear English about it. So I think CMAP needs to help out for those in the disability community who cannot speak clear English, needs to translate it. So that's my suggestion on it. And my wife Heather Armstrong want to say something too. Hold on.
Welcome, Heather. Hello, welcome.
Oh, looks like you got muted, Garland. Hold. I wonder if we can unmute him. Garland, if you can hear us, you might need to unmute yourself. Heather?
I lost him.
I think CTA needs to file bankruptcy and then go out of business and give the trains to Metra and the buses to Pace, because they're like billions of dollars in debt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. We're paying pretty close attention to the transit situation, and we care about that too. So our condolences to both of you. I'm so sorry for your loss.
Yeah, so I'll find out if there's going to be a memorial or not. It's still up in the air. So I'll keep you posted if I have to come back for it. Okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Carlin. Good luck to both of you. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, with that in mind, if there's no other business, did I miss something? No other business? Next meeting will be, again, the combined meeting with the MPO Policy Committee on October 8th. Please, that's also an important meeting because of a consent agenda between the two of us.
It is. We are asking for a little bit more of your time, so just make sure that you look at that calendar invite in advance. We will probably do our business and keep it very short at the beginning because, as Elizabeth said, we do want to spend the majority of the time in a workshop situation talking about the Century Plan and your goals for the future for us. We're working on a space. We're having some technical difficulties in our primary room. We're looking at some other spaces. So again, we will keep you informed as soon as we know what that location is going to be as well.
Thank you. With that in mind, I'll entertain a motion to
Motion to
adjourn.
adjourn.
Move to second. All in favor, usual matter? Motion carried, meeting adjourned. Please clear the-
And stay if you are on the executive committee. That sounds good. Quick picture with Jung.